the mental challenges attached with not achieving your dreams, it's it's really hard. And then you got to, as you know, in sport, you're 25, 26 years old, and you're seen to be one of the elders, the leaders, and experienced guys, and you step away from that career into the business world, and you're just a young pup still wet behind the ears, and it's a really hard transition to take.
Does societal pressure have an impact on your mental health and well-being? The expectations, norms, and standards imposed by society can leave you feeling stress, anxiety, and more often than not, inadequate. This all has a negative impact on your mental well-being. In this episode, we explore the impact of societal pressure on mental health and the importance of personal resilience and perspective. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you're holding yourself back and what to do about it, with the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew, so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. Today, Jason Warne joins me to discuss the legacy of his famous brother, coping with challenges, promoting mental health awareness, the significance of personal achievements and family in finding happiness, and we both discuss what it was like to grow up in famous families. Stay tuned to hear about the importance of staying true to yourself. Jason, great to meet you, mate.
You too, Nick. You too. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate you making the time to come on the podcast. So I might just jump into it. Are you able to just give our listeners a background on yourself, what you do, and how you came to be doing what you're now doing?
Yes. It was a really interesting start. Years ago, my brother Shane Warne, his first manager, was based up in the Gold Coast, and I'd just finished uni, and he wanted someone in Melbourne to give him a bit of a hand, and so I did that on a part-time basis, and then that quickly became full-time, and then 3 or 4 years later, gained so much experience from OC, and he had done World Series cricket with John Cornell and Kerry Packer, so I had a lot to learn from him. And then I branched out. I went to IMG for a year before branching out on my own, and managed athletes for many years, then sort of moved more into events and licensed products, and eventually sort of stepped away from everything I was doing that had exposure to it, and just started consulting, and I've been doing that for the last 12, 13 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And, one of the things about managing athletes is, a lot of people think it's, just rubbing shoulders with people and hanging out with professional athletes and stuff like that. But it's actually, you have to develop a really broad skill base. You're working in really tight with accountants, lawyers, PR, marketing, and you're trying to glean as much as you can from all of them to make sure that you're advising your clients correctly and positioning them correctly. So you develop a really broad business knowledge. And, I've been fortunate to be able to apply that across multiple different streams over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, so I can imagine be a very hands-on sort of role. And do you find with the athletes, some of them you end up being almost a bit of a voice for them to talk to about whatever it is, personal issues, it might be their mental health, might be whatever. I can imagine that would, happen quite a bit.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that where the public think that professional athletes are really bulletproof, It's actually quite the opposite. A lot of the time they're quite vulnerable. They're quite, they have a lot of self-doubt, which is what's pushed them to being as good as they are. And, if they have a hiccup, whether it's injury or a drop in form, temporary drop in form or something like that, it's they actually really do question themselves, and, being able to help them work through that and remind them that they are where they are because of how good they are, and try and work with them to get back to their best. It's it can be challenging.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because we look at all of these athletes as they're heroes of so many people, and like you said, we think they're bulletproof, and we think that they can handle anything. They're so tough, they can cope with whatever's thrown at them, and we forget it's a human just like us behind what they're doing, and you see it time and time again. I mean, I guess one of the biggest stories around that would be Michael Phelps, where he, the most decorated Olympic athlete in history, and he was suicidal after he finished because it's just you're going from such a
that's a massive part of it. And when people retire, it's how do you replace performing in front of hundreds or tens of thousands of people and getting all of that adulation and that constant acknowledgement of how good you are? But it just disappears like a click of the fingers. And you touched on something earlier about them becoming role models and like this poster person for kids, but they're not prepared for that either. So that has its own challenges. Like all of a sudden, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they can't walk down the street without people taking photos or reporting what they're doing. And so you find a lot of young athletes end up on in the paper for the wrong reasons, and not through, they're only doing what every other normal people do, but they seem to not be able to do that. They've got to make that has an impact on their mental health early in their career, and they've got to make a lot of adjustments throughout their career to deal with that.
Yeah, and like you're saying there, they haven't necessarily asked to be a role model. They've just wanted to play. They've just grown up playing sport, wanted to play it at the highest level, and it comes with all of these other responsibilities. And yeah, it's a tricky thing. I think about that a lot because when I was younger, I wanted to be an athlete, and I competed at a pretty high level in AFL and middle distance running, and I got injured. And when I was 18 and sort of had to stop for a couple of years, that was when my mental health problems really started because all I wanted to do was be an athlete, and I got such a thrill out of it that nothing really seemed as exciting until I sort of did a lot of work on myself and worked out what I really cared about. And that was only obviously a very micro example compared to professional athletes, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of dollars, fans everywhere. I really can't imagine how you go from that to then thinking retiring and having to have the realization that, well, I can never have that again. I'm going to have to, what do I actually do now? How do I transition?
Oh, yeah. So that's a really big part. And like what you touched on, mate, I'm the same as you. I'm a failed sportsman as well. I managed to be sup-listed at St Kilda for a year after under-19s, but got cut after that. And I went overseas for 2 years to find myself. But it's even harder for the guys who are on the list for 3, 4, 5 years, and they think they're a chance, but they only ever play like half a dozen games and never quite make it. Or the guys who are good enough but get injured and can never fulfil their promise. So these, all those people, there's the mental challenges attached with not achieving your dreams. It's it's really hard, and then you got to, as you know, in sport, you're 25, 26 years old, and you're seen to be one of the elders, the leaders, and experienced guys, and you step away from that career into the business world, and you're just a young pup still wet behind the ears, and it's a really hard transition to take.
Exactly, because you've got skill sets in one specific area, but you're literally starting from scratch in this other area. So it's it's just such a transition. And another question that was coming to mind on the flip side, have you seen with athletes where
they have had this goal that their whole life is revolved around. They actually achieve it, but then when they achieve it, they realize, I still don't feel like whatever that hole in me that's there has been filled. And then it's like, where do you go from there? Because I've interviewed Olympic gold medalists who became incredibly depressed after winning the gold medal, because that was all their life was about, and they thought, well, how come I still feel all of these other issues? How come they're still there?
Well, Andre Agassi is a really good example of that. He got to number one in the world, hated tennis, always hated tennis. He was pushed into it by his dad because he was so good at it, and got to number one in the world and just spiraled, and just wasn't doing it for him. And he ended up back in 150, 200 in the world, something like that. And it wasn't until he found what his real purpose was, and he started his charity and wanted to help people. And then he saw tennis as a vehicle to allow him to achieve that. So rather than tennis being the be-all and end-all, it became a vehicle for him to do what filled that hole in him. And I think that's a really good example for a lot of people who are in that situation, that it's not always getting 30 touches and kicking 6 goals that's going to fill that hole. Don't get me wrong, it does quite a bit. But sometimes you've got to look a bit broader and see whether it's the smile you're putting on the kids' faces, whether it's the joy the supporters get from you helping your team win, whether it's the profile that you can then lend to other pursuits of your life. Whatever it is, it's finding your why. And if you can do that and marry that with what you're good at, then that's going to be pretty good from a mental perspective.
No, I love that example. And I think that applies to anyone in the world, whatever pursuit you're going down. I think especially in the modern world, where overexposed to information, media, young kids want a quick fix, they want to be famous or whatever it is. And even if you can get it, it really doesn't mean a lot if there's not the meaning behind it. And I've had my own, personal experience with that, where, I wanted to be the athlete, went through that pretty serious depression, came out the other end, was then on TV shows and in the media. And then I thought, I want to be famous, I want more of this. And then I got depressed and was doing acting, but for the wrong reasons. And then when I found this cause of mental health, I was then able to go back calmly into the acting side of things with more the goal, like you were saying there, of I want to do it so I can actually create content and be part of, getting a message out there that can help further get this mental health message out. And it's just a very, it's a small change of mindset, but a massive one, because you really, you look at everything completely differently, and you remove a lot of that angst that, a lot of us carry around.
No, totally agree. I think it's also a matter of being aware that life isn't static, and what your why is today might not be in 2 years' time. But may change. And I know with myself, like you, initially it was sport, wanting to be a professional athlete. Then I was, getting into business and wanting to own the world and become a, major international businessman and all the rest of it. Then I had kids, and then it was more about trying to work out how to spend more time with the kids and help them, get them through private school and all of that, and all the financial challenges that are attached to all of that. But now, my kids are 20 and 22, and, life changes again, and your why changes, and peace and happiness and all of that come into play, and setting a good example for your kids and helping them, trying to help them not make the mistakes you made at their age and things like that. So it's always in a state of flux.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at NickBrax. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess when we're younger, we have the mindset that we don't have any time. Everything has to happen now. If I don't achieve everything before I'm 30, then I've run out of time. And I think it's, you realize, like you're saying there, it's really seasons of life. You've got, different stages, and different stages bring new opportunities and a new perspective. So it's sort of, we don't have to be in in that rush that we often feel like we're in.
No, exactly. And it's breaking life down to small bites too, small achievable bites.
Exactly. So what would be your advice to your younger self if you could look back now when you were, just finishing up at high school and entering the world? What from the perspective you have now, what would be the advice to yourself back then?
In some ways, narrow your focus, I think. I think that when you're young, it's easy to try and achieve a few different things at the same time. And like with football, I probably could have been more committed. I could have, you think about it and you think, well, I could have gone to the gym an extra time each week. I could have gone for an extra couple of runs each week. I could have not gone out and got on the piss with the boys on a Friday night. Things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I suppose it's, really working out what's important to you and then doing what you need to do to achieve that. And I'm a big believer that stress is essentially not doing what you know you should have done. And so you get to a point where you've had time to do something, you should have done it, and you haven't. So then you start stressing that you're not going to get it done. Where if you do everything you need to do when you need to do it, that you can avoid that stress. That's my belief anyway. And it's also a mindset of, you can control what you can control and don't stress about what you can't because it's out of your control. So why worry about it? You just do what you can to influence the result.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And stress, yeah, when you're feeling anxiety or stress or, you've got that chronic anxiety, it's trying to tell you something, like you're saying, it's trying to tell you, okay, like I've got to change something. I'm not doing something that I should be doing. And if we ignore it, then it'll only amplify. And I think a lot of the time it's easier to, to be the victim or to blame something else or whatever it is. And it's so easy to fall into that pattern. And I think so many people, I've fallen into that many times. And you eventually have to realize, hang on, this is no one else's fault except mine. I'm the one accountable here. And like you're saying, look at what can I actually control? And let's just focus on that and, forget everything else.
And look, sometimes things happen that is out of your control and it impacts you greatly.
Yeah.
I had a guy go bankrupt on me like 14 years ago and it cost me a hell of a lot of money. But you can either sit there and whinge about it and blame him for your position, or you can lick your wounds, get back, dust yourself off, get back up and move forward again. And yes, you're not where you wanted to be, but there's no point worrying about it. It's happened. You can't change it.
Yeah.
So, that's it. I think there are people who really worry about the things they can't control. And look, sometimes that's just the way they are and they suffer from anxiety and, it's trying to find coping techniques for that. But I'm fortunate that I don't. So I'd hate to be in that position because it makes it harder. But I'm a bit of a realist and, you don't have to like what life is, but you just got to make the best of what it is.
Yeah. And a lot of it's just, it is such a hard thing to do sometimes, but it's really using logic and thinking, hang on, if I sit here and worry about this and catastrophize, who's it actually going to affect? Only me. I'm actually making my own life harder than it needs to be. It's not going to affect anyone else. I'm just choosing by choosing to worry about this. I'm choosing to create more pain for myself. So it's not logical at all.
It's not going to change it either.
No matter how much you think about something, it won't change it.
No, exactly. Only actions change things.
Exactly. So a question I have for you, which basing it on my own experience, I grew up with a famous father. My dad was the Premier of Victoria from when I was 12 until early 20s. And that, created a very, I guess, unique situation. And, not trying to work out what was my own identity. How do I create my own path? You growing up with your brother being, one of the biggest sporting stars in the country. How was that for you? And how did you cope with that? Did that affect you? What was your experience with that?
Look, it's all you know. So,
Yeah.
people say, "Oh, what's it like having a famous brother?" Well, I don't know any different. That's just the way it is, and the positives so far outweigh the negatives, without doubt. Him being him has allowed me to do some amazing things over the years. You know, best of all was standing on the side of the stage at a Pearl Jam concert with Tim Robbins. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's got this. We both wanted to be sportsmen. I'm glad he made it, and it's so. It was always what you're hoping would happen. The fact that he became as big as he did, well, I didn't see that coming. But but I was just immensely proud of him and happy for him, and whilst you're a little bit dirty yourself, you didn't get there. I was always really happy for him that he did. I think him being him, though, on the downside to that is there's always people lurking around, as you know, using you to get to them, and you get pretty good at identifying who your real friends are and who are the ones who are trying to use you because of who your brother is and all of that. So, that creates some challenges in life, but you learn how to deal with that pretty quickly. Um, I'm sure you've had exactly the same. I think one of the hard things is preconceived ideas of what you like as a person. Oh, your brother's like this, so you must be the same, or whatever it is. And you just want people to get to know you for you rather than who your brother is.
Yeah. Exactly. No, exactly. All great points, but yeah, and like you're saying, at the end of the day, the positives far outweigh the negatives, and it's just again how we look at life, and being I love those examples you've given there. So yeah, definitely relate to all of that.
A good example is at his memorial at the MCG. Like, some people said, "Oh, that must have been so hard to get up and talk in front of so many people." I said, "Well, no, I saw it as the opposite. I saw it as what an amazing opportunity it was to say goodbye to my brother on that platform."
Yeah.
So it's all about mindset, I think, a lot of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it was incredible how much public acknowledgement there was for him. It just shows the impact that he had on, well, not just Australia, globally. It's incredible. I don't think there's been an athlete that's had more impact globally, for an Australian athlete that has done that.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And whilst it's, hard hearing about it all the time, it was also so nice to hear so many people say nice things about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what got you involved in Run the Town?
Shane, when they first started it, Shane got on board as an ambassador and pushed them to have a celebrity race, and that was the year before he died. So they got in touch with us about getting on board, and there's a couple of things we've been doing to try and continue his legacy. And I thought this was a fitting thing to do because it's a great event. One from just a general public perspective, it's one of the most popular training grounds in Melbourne. So many people do it, and to be able to, and they'd be really curious how they stack up against professional athletes and all of that. So this gives them an opportunity to do that, to check their times against, the professional athletes and Olympic runners and soccer players, all of that. And it's also a pretty fun thing to see which of the celebrities can actually get around in a decent time as well.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, for such a great cause to raise awareness about mental health. So I think it's fantastic.
Oh, it is. And I think I'm a big believer that fitness is a really good part of your life to help with mental health. Getting out, moving, and, running on a treadmill is good, but running outside's I just think it's better. You get out.
Yeah.
I prefer it when it's not raining or cold, but I'm fortunate. I live in Mornington. I've got some really good cliff tracks along the beach that I can run through, and some days I get to see dolphin pods swimming along while I'm running and stuff like that. And it's, so I'm fortunate in that perspective. But, I just, I love getting out and going for a run or just going to the beach, whatever. It's just getting outside and doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the best thing for mental health, like you're saying there. And it's how the name of this podcast came about, Move Your Mind, moving for mental health. I think it's just, for me, that's been the biggest thing. I just do something every day, and it's night and day how much it makes a difference. I think, we all know it, but we need to do more.
Well, it's little things too. I think, especially on the days that you don't, it's easy to do it when you want to do it. But to do it when you don't want to do it, you have that sense of achievement. You have this, it's like the old saying, first thing you should do when you wake up is make your bed. You've achieved something for the day.
Yeah.
And I think, from a mental health perspective, achieving little goals or little wins helps.
It really does. And that's a thing that I go back to whenever I've fallen back into a state where I can feel my mental health going down. Just doing anything, it could be a task like just sending one email. Because whenever you're overwhelmed, the natural thing to do when you're overwhelmed is shut off and do nothing. And so you got to fight that and just do one little thing. And then that leads to another. And then before you know it, you sort of remove that, you're out of that state. So it's such a big thing.
Yeah. Paralysis by analysis and fear of failure, all of that stuff. And sometimes you just got to do it.
Exactly.
What's the old saying? Eat your frog.
I haven't heard that one. Eat your frog.
eat your frog. So it's an old saying. It basically refers to there's always one thing, or a lot of the time, there's one thing that you just don't want to do. And you get to it and you'll lose hours and hours every day trying to work out a way, thinking about doing it, but distracting yourself doing something else because you just don't want to do it. And so they say, first thing in the day, eat your frog. First thing you do. That one thing you don't want to do that, and then everything else is easy. And you're not stopping yourself from doing all the stuff you need to do by avoiding doing the thing you don't want to do. Get it done, and then everything else is easy.
I love it. I'm going to use that. Eat your frog. That's great. So, Jason, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. We finish every episode with 5 closing questions. So these can sort of be, whatever comes to mind. The first one being, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
The first time I beat my brother in tennis.
Love it. What do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
I think this is not going to be politically correct, mind you, but I think political correctness. I think everything changes week to week, and everyone's constantly being told you can't do this or you can't say that. You have to do this. You have to do that. I think people should just be able to live, and rather than everyone being upset all the time over whatever they can find to be upset about, just treat people with respect and treat other people how you want to be treated yourself. And life's not that hard.
It's not that complicated. And I think it goes back to what we were saying before, where, people want to find someone to blame, something to be angry about. And I feel like that's a big part of it. Instead of just, if you take accountability for your own life and try and, even if we don't agree, who cares? Like, find commonality. And this whole polarity on so many levels, it's ridiculous. It's not logical, is it? It's just stupid.
Sorry to go on about it, but the one that got me was when they wanted to change the pedestrian crossings from a man and a girl to like gay couples, lesbian couples, with children, elderly. It's like, really, the stick figures. I think we all know what it means.
Exactly. It's gone out of proportion. I mean, equality's great. That's important, good, but let's be logical with everything.
Everyone should be able to do whatever they want, but you shouldn't be forced to do whatever.
Yeah. So on that note, the next question, I think in modern times, a lot of men now feel like they don't know what it means to be a man anymore. Well, what does that involve? How are you meant to be? So a question I ask is, what would you say it means to be a man?
That's actually a really tough question, isn't it?
It
I
is.
think to be a man, it's I think a couple of things that men need, whether it's from their partner or their friends or just in general life. I think if you can feel respected, if you can feel like you add value to the world, if you feel like you treat people well, I think that's really what it comes down to. You can get caught up with should you open doors for girls, who should pay for the bill, all of that stuff. But I think, if you try and dive into individual things, that's where it gets complicated. If you
Yeah.
just try and keep it quite broad, and everyone's going to have their own interpretation of what that means. Everyone's different. But, I think that's the basics of it.
Yeah, exactly. Simplifying it. I think it
Yeah. Act
coming.
so that you get what you want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think great answer. So I've got two more. What's your personal definition of happiness?
Um, Playing golf on a Saturday and having a beer with the boys.
Can't go too wrong with that.
Yeah, I think it's just it's happy kid. Knowing that I'm supporting my kids, they're not always going to be happy, so I won't say happy kids, but knowing I'm there for they know that I'm there for them. It's trying to avoid conflict in your life. It's knowing you're doing what you have to do so you can pay your bills. And for me, I want to be able to go on a holiday each year. I want to be able to play golf on a Saturday, and some people will be go fishing. Some people will be go to the pub with the boys on a Saturday afternoon, or play cricket, or whatever it is. Play video games, I don't know. But everyone has their own thing that they want to be able to be in a position where they've done where they know they're doing what they have to do to create the free time for what they want to do, and not have the worry and concern of not being able to pay your bills.
Yeah, I love it. So final one, what are you most proud of?
Probably who my kids are growing up to be.
Yeah, nothing more important.
No.
Yeah.
Whilst there's challenges getting them through there, I went to Hampton High for 2 years before I went to Mentone Grammar. And, I'm sure, and I know there's a lot of good public schools out there, but there was a massive difference for me between the two schools. And the one thing I wanted to achieve when I had kids was to put them through private school if I could. And I think that if you decide to have kids, you automatically take on the responsibility of giving them the best start you can in life. And I just thought, from my perspective, and others won't agree, but from my perspective, having a private school education was part of that. Not so much for the pure academic side of it, but it's more networks, it's more life goals, that sort of thing. So having done that and seen who they've come out to be and seeing them want to attack life and want to achieve in life, that fills me with pride. That tells you got something right.
Absolutely, mate. I think great way to end. And again, really appreciate you making the time. Are there any links we should send people to for Run the Tan? Otherwise, I'll just have in the show notes some general ones, but we can put anything in there.
They send me the link? It's just runthetan.net.
Runthetan.net, yep.
Yeah, and look, everyone will be putting up their own fundraising pages, and the more money that there is in the pool to support mental health, the better off people will be. Unfortunately, I've had 4 or 5 friends commit suicide over the years, and one of them was from from getting knocked out too many times from playing footy, which is unfortunately tried to get help. Wow. There wasn't anything that could happen to him. He tried everything. He even had friends on suicide watch with him because he was getting these thoughts he didn't want to do it. Unfortunately, he was by himself at one stage and did. But I've got other friends who have committed suicide after just having mental health battles. So it's awful to lose a friend. It's awful for the people close to them to lose their loved ones. And anything we can do to prevent that happening to others is a great result.
It's shocking. And I mean, the statistics around suicide, especially with men, are terrifying, and it needs to be talked about. And it's crazy, the amount of people I've interviewed where, like you've just said there, 5 friends. I mean, it's something we shouldn't be having to have happen on that level. And it's just unbelievable when you sort of go one layer under the surface, you hear how often this happens. It just, we need to do more about it.
And it's generally the moments in life, like we talked about earlier, where you've got a failed dream. When you're young, you don't make it as an athlete. And some people don't handle that as well. It might be you get to middle, a lot of people in middle age, all of a sudden they realise they're not going to own their own house, or they've got a failed marriage, or they've stuffed up with their kids. But they get to a stage of life where they think they've run out of time to fix it, run out of time to achieve what their goal was, and they just feel like a failure. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. So anything we can do to help prevent that, it's a bonus.
It's horrible. And I think the message needs to be that, you're enough regardless, even if things don't go to plan. That's like great. We should try and achieve all these things. But whatever happens at the end of the day, as long as you're healthy and you've got, you got people around you, then you can get through anything. We don't, that it doesn't really matter. Not that much matters apart from health, our loved ones, family, friends. So I think, we need more education in that area. Yeah.
Totally agree.
So anyway, mate, thank you so much for making the time. Been great to meet you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason Warne, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or send a DM. Your feedback is appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.